everyone moves on to the next job, and something breaks down, and that pump needs to be replaced. Someone comes in, nice digital model, I've got all the data there, but if I can't find the exact same model or the exact same manufacturer, and I have to change it for something else, my information in my model still says it's the old pump. So who's going to update that information? You can't just change the physical thing and not change the digital thing. So clients need to understand that all of a sudden there's a new responsibility on facilities managers. They have to not only maintain the physical, they also have to maintain the digital. They have to be the same. So there must be a strategy for that in place. And also the same for the hardware. I mean, who's going to physically upgrade and make sure that the computers that we have actually can handle all this new information? The infrastructure that you have might be outdated in 5 years' time, and if I can't handle that information that's constantly being updated, who's going to make sure that we actually have the correct IT infrastructure in place? So that really is all the things that you have to consider before you even start the project. And you have to capture that in your asset information requirements, in your EIR, make sure everything's in place to have successful delivery during operations. That's the how you do it. And it's quite a challenging task because not lots of people understand actually how that process works and what's required. So just quickly, I'm going to talk about a case study. This is a project that I'm working on in Cambridge. It's my biggest project that I'm working on. Unfortunately, I can't disclose the client. But essentially what we said was, okay, fine. You've got this 3D model and you've got all the information, but what do you want to use it for when we get to the end? What are your operational requirements? All the things that I just spoke about, we started asking them. Do you want to use BIM for your M&E maintenance? Do you want to use it for preventative maintenance or just reactive maintenance? These are all terms that some of you might be familiar with, especially if you've had FM classes. Yeah?
How did BIM help with regards to the laboratories within that building? No, because I know that can be quite complicated as well. So, because you were probably dealing with lab staff that weren't very familiar with BIM.
Yeah.
Did they get an education out of it, and was that an easy process?
No, it wasn't. The critical thing is you need to involve everyone who's going to use those the asset at the end. You need to involve them at the very start. And we did have all the lab benches out. We had a door here. We had the fume cupboards in certain areas. And they actually looked at the model and said, hang on a minute, that's not going to work. Because normally students do this experiment, then they move here, and then they can dispose of all the toxic chemicals here. And the way it was laid out was wrong. So I had to change the design really early on. And it could have had a really big implication had they not been involved early on. Because what if we built it the other way, and then it didn't work? It would have had a really big impact. So it was foreign to them at the beginning. But I'll show you at the end a slide of what we call a BIM workshop. It's just called a BIM workshop. Huge screen like this. You have the model up there, and you walk around the model, and you say to them, how would you like things to be? How you're going to live and work in it. How do you want things to operate? What would make your life easier? And is there anything in there that you think, actually, hang on, the design needs to change? Because typically, this is what I do. Kitchens especially, commercial kitchens. Yeah. Chefs, especially Michelin star chefs, they have things set out in a certain manner. And if this bench isn't in the right place, and the cooker and the extractor fan, if it's not in the right place and the layout isn't right, it really disrupts the way you work. And that goes for almost every profession, even if you work in an office. And it's important to test those things over and over. And yeah, so far it's a success. Yeah.
Given the fact that you have to have you have to have the client's end use in mind right from the beginning of the design. When doing that particular confidential building, did the flexible working arrangements or the need for the building to be flexible over time compromise the BIM model?
No, it didn't. Do you mean actually during the engagement period, or actually what it will be like during operation?
Both. So the over the 60 or how many years it is, that is going to be over operation.
Yeah.
The building has to be flexible, so you have to be able to change the functional spaces and things like that.
Yeah.
How did BIM enable that to be
Absolutely.
done
Yeah. Okay.
well?
So that was a really big consideration as well. They said, well, okay, what if we want to change one of the floors into something completely different? And it was built in such a way where the partitions that actually made up the whole layout of a certain floor is non-structural, non-load bearing. So if they wanted to in 5 years, they could go in and strip literally all the internal walls out and do something else with it. And even the mechanical and electrical services were laid out in a way that it could easily be diverted and changed into something else. Because they might change some office space into a new dance studio or something where students could go to. And it's very, very important, like you rightly said, that we anticipate how a building's functionality can change over 40, 60 or even 100 years. Really, really important. Good question.
In terms of BIM, is it cost effective to use it in the tender stages when you're pricing the job, or for the mechanical, electrical management? Or is it a lot more work?
No.
And the size of the job?
It's a lot less work.
Yeah.
It's a lot less work. I work with quantity surveyors, cost managers, who currently have to price a job off a drawing. How? By measuring it with a ruler. All the conduit, all the trunking, all the containment with a ruler, and then add it up on a big Excel spreadsheet and then multiply by a cost. What if I checked my model and made absolutely sure that the model integrity was correct? I press quantity takeoff and it spits out everything in the model, and I multiply it by a rate. Your cost plans are much, much more accurate.
In terms of like the energy output though, when you're trying to get a calculation so that you can give that to your client, it can save you money by having a boiler that's running like 95%. So to get them calcs spot on, it's to do.
Absolutely. There's a program called Dynamo. Dynamo is a program that mechanical and electrical engineers use a lot, because actually if you do the schematic design, you're able to use mathematics and computers to actually test your calculations and make sure that if I've got 7 units of air coming in per hour, what is the output of that air handling unit, and will it be able to cope with the amount of cooling that I need to provide for that space? It's all being done electronically. Yeah?
Do you reckon one of the futures BIM may hold is to make it feasible contract administrators, especially in countries with codified laws, so you can actually identify sections of the building of how you codify all systems?
Absolutely. I can give you the name of someone, Christine knows it very well, who is a bit of a legal expert, or very well known in the BIM industry. And she does really good blogs, and she's a real expert, and looking at how contract and contract administration is actually going to affect the way we procure buildings and assets is going to change hugely, massive, because we'll have digital clauses that are all connected to the delivery of that program. So it's a massive area that's going to change over time, especially when we get to what's called level 3, IP and insurance and all the rest. A huge impact. Yeah, just one here first.
Just coming back from this question, when modelling energy
Yeah.
within a building,
Yeah.
in particular looking at the second level of energy, so not primary energy but secondary energy, is there a limitation for that? Because I haven't seen many plugins or things that can actually model that kind of energy properly within a building.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you've experienced even with this Cambridge building or with Battersea Power Station.
Yeah. No. To be honest, most of our energy analysis happens during concept design. The software, Mohammed, he's a bit of an expert on this. IES, all those software. We use flat surfaces to calculate solar gain, thermal heat gain, U values and all the rest. That can be done quite early on, but it requires quite a simplistic model. And I would probably speak to Mohammed, who knows much more than me. He's actually doing a PhD in that as well. So I'm sure that's your area of specialism. Feel free to ask him as well. Yeah. Your question at the top?
Yeah, just when you kind of touched off there earlier.
Yeah.
So you obviously come in from an end user and facilities manager point of view, but it obviously starts off in probably an architect's studio, it's passed through a client's hands, contractor, project management consultancy, and all the rest of it. So who ultimately owns it? And if it is to be sold to the client as a product at a cost, who's liable for the information that's on it?
Okay. Let's forget about them. Okay. How have we designed for the last few hundred years? We've used paper and we've created drawings.
Yeah.
And the contractor then goes and he does what's called an as-built drawing, right? Which is really just taking the designer's drawings, making sure what we've built matches the drawings. Who gets those drawings? Who owns them? The client. The client pays for it. The client pays for all of it. The client owns the drawings. Today, the client owns the model. He doesn't own the intellectual property. He doesn't own the intellectual property. Okay? And actually, if you use the CIC BIM protocol, the client issues the design team with a license. And they keep all the IP. So if someone stole the model, copied it, and built another building that looks exactly the same, those designers can sue them. Same as paper. Same as paper, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so then if, I don't know, so if you're building like a massive building and
Yeah.
you say carpets should last 10 years or the lights should last 50 years and they don't, so the information in the model is flawed, who's liable after the fact? So it'd be the same, it'd be your...
Well, if you say the carpets last 10 years,
Who guarantees the information is kind of what I'm getting at.
well, the designers are liable for the design intent. So ultimately, if they design something and specify something that fails, the liability lies on the designers then.
But like, so if I think one of the things he's trying to say is that you were talking about the integrity of the information, and if the as-built, so the contractor doesn't update the model and things like that after construction, and then 10 years down the line something breaks down and you realise like
Right.
it's not what it says
Okay.
it was. Who has the liability for
Okay,
that?
fine. So let's say this. Okay, project managers are there to protect the client. So if a contractor built this room, and at the end we hand over this room, and the window was missing, would the client sign off practical completion? Would he say, well done, here's your money, thanks? No, he'll say, hang on a minute, there's a window missing. You're not complying with the brief. So we're not going to sign off practical completion until you fix it. So there's another level of information integrity or validation that I believe project managers should look after. So part of my job is looking at the model, verifying that all the information is there. It's really hard to make sure the information is correct. That's really, really hard. Because my job isn't to go around site and check whether the serial number is the same as the pump. That's not my job. but someone needs to be in place, someone needs to be liable, and as the contractor still is liable for that information. So we will check and verify whether the model is there, whether it meets the EIR, and if the model and all the information is compliant with the brief, then we can sign off practical completion and say, well, okay, the window is in, and in the model, you haven't left out the window either. The window is in there as well. And we've verified both, the physical and the digital, and sign off.
Forgot to see,
Yeah.
does the logistics system link into the law? Because I'm thinking about this from a contractor's perspective. The best way to ensure that that thing was installed in the building is to first ensure that it actually got delivered to site. So therefore you would link the logistics system into the BIM model to say, okay, this thing has now arrived in site.
Yeah.
Then the next thing is, okay, it hasn't been installed.
Okay. The answer is no, not a battery. I don't think the technology has evolved to the point where it's commercially viable to digitize the whole construction process. We're not quite there yet. It will absolutely happen. I can tell you of contractors who actually they print out QR codes, and when all the steelwork gets manufactured, every steel member gets a QR code. And as it comes through the site, as it comes through the gate, someone scans it. Ping, 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 ping. And in the model, it turns orange. It actually means it's arrived on site. And once it's been installed, the project manager signs it off, says, okay, Mr. Contractor, yes, that's installed, I've snagged it, I'm happy with it, scans it again, turns green. So you've got a model that builds itself from orange to green. And by the time we get to the end, hopefully everything is green. Yeah?
What software is it mainly using? Because I get what BIM is, but is it mainly using Revit? Is there a specific software allocated to it?
There are thousands of different software packages that make up the BIM environment or this common data environment. Every piece of analysis software that we've spoken about tonight, they're all different. If you start talking about actually designing or authoring models, yes, Revit is one of the more popular ones. It's not to say it's the best. ArchiCAD, Allplan, Vectorworks, there are a whole host of design tools. The planning tool, Synchro, Asta, for tower projects, cost management, use Costex, and Cato. So the possibilities are endless. If you talk about the common data environment or EDMS, then you can think of Viewpoint, Asite, so many collaborative platforms. Because the main point is that BIM is not a single piece of software. It's made up of everyone who contributes to the process.
In relation to like BIM and then the actual methods of construction,
Yeah.
because you could design it, say like if it was steelwork, but within there, obviously you're going to have space to put your crane, space for your scaffold.
Yeah.
Will it incorporate all of that kind of stuff, and will the methods of construction, because you're still going to need kind of that practical influence upon the design to ensure that it runs smoothly to stick with the schedule.
That's exactly why main contractors are absolutely embracing the BIM, this model with the information. They're embracing it because they can put scaffold, a crane, trucks, people, they can put everything in there and schedule it and make sure that they've got enough resources, and they don't accidentally on the plan start installing the cladding when the scaffolding is still up. So you're able to streamline that process and all the logistics around it, even the site, the canteen, the site office, everything there, you're able to simulate in a digital environment and test it over and over again. Right. Last question, and then I'm going to move on because I believe I'm 10 minutes over already. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Go on.
Right. If, for example, you are going to start working for a contractor.
Yeah.
You said that sort of the contractor's job is to update the system and always send it back to the project team. What would you suggest sort of courses-wise or training-wise to start getting into that? So when you, for example, I'm job into, you can say, I can do this, I can work with BIM, I can update it and work.
Yeah.
Because I think that's very
Yeah.
important.
Again, I can talk about that afterwards, because training, we're just going to open a whole can of worms there as well. And accreditation, I always don't want to talk about. Yeah. So we'll move on, and then at the end, those who want to go home can go, and I'm going to stay a bit longer as well. Okay. So just quickly to get back to this, we said to the client, okay, what is it you want to use as part of your hard FM? You're familiar with hard and soft FM? No? No? Yes? Okay. Anyway, you've got hard and soft FM. Essentially, we said, do you want your preventative maintenance, your reactive maintenance, and all your testing through the digital information in this model? Those were the questions. We said, what about your strategy for soft FM? Cleaning, reception, your mail room, IT, the front desk, all your fleet, security, landscaping, catering, pest control. These are all things that form part of FM. Really critical. And I mean, the list is much bigger in soft FM. So we said, okay, fine. These are the things that you have to include in your facilities management strategy. How can we use BIM to support those processes? First, said, well, okay, what information do your facilities managers require? And they said, well, we need spatial information, we need locations, volumes and areas, because first of all, your room and your objects must be located, you must be able to find it in the model. If something breaks and I can't find it in the model because it's not tagged properly, then I won't be able to just walk straight to it. They also wanted volumes to work out heating and cooling purposes. We actually spoke about that as well in terms of sustainability. And areas. If I need to change this carpet, I want to just quickly look at the model and see exactly in square meters how much carpet I need. And I can send that off for a quote straight away. Get lots of quotes from different subcontractors. I don't want to come in here and measure it, which I promise you happens probably 99% of the time currently. For painting, if you said, oh, please can I have this room repainted? How would you know? You'd have to go and measure it out. I want that information in my model at the end. So we said, yeah, no problem. Okay? Every colored box represents a room. So you've got all your volumes, you've got all your areas, you've got all your locations. Easy peasy. Okay, what information do you need in terms of the physical information? Said, well, okay, we want to know what objects we have, and we want all the data that we require. So all the pumps, the boilers, the windows, the doors, everything that might need information for maintenance, I want to have that as part of my digital information model. I briefly touched on Kobe, which I'm not going to go into at all, but the client specified Kobe, because this is actually a level 2 project as well. So that's what they asked for. They said, this is what we want. We want to be able to walk into the plant room, touch something, and it gives us every single bit of information. Name, description, asset identifier, the barcode, the manufacturer, expected life. When does it need replacing?
In connection with connecting to existing services,
Yeah.
if you're going to design something, you know the total output, but the mains isn't big enough to take that load, then in relation to sourcing and consulting the main suppliers, are they going to get to a stage where they're going to say, if you haven't got them, this is how it will build onto our model
Yeah.
and onto the main services? And will there be a model for that?
Good question. I would say yes. I would say we're going to get to a point where people will say, okay, give me your existing model. Because if you want to renovate or extend or just build a whole new building, I think in the future, mechanical engineers and electric engineers would want to use that electronic data that's already there. Because like you said, they will be able to design something and test it on what's exactly there already. Yeah, I think so. We're digitizing. The construction industry is digitizing. We are moving away from paper. So that's what they wanted. So we said, okay, fine, that's great. So for planned and preventative maintenance, we can use BIM. For reactive maintenance, we can use BIM. However, for electrical testing and the building management system, for those of you who know what a BMS is, it's essentially a huge big dashboard which is linked to every maintainable component, and when it's about to fail, it sends a signal. It's got a sensor and it tells the BMS there's something wrong with me. Now, were we going to actually link the model to the BMS so that when something flashes, you can actually see it in the model? Turns out that technology is not there yet. It will happen, but it's really expensive and not really viable at this stage. Soft FM. So I said, well, okay, for cleaning and hygiene, yeah, we're going to use space planning. We're going to use the model. For office services, we want to be able to book a room by tapping on the room. I want to be able to use that information, tap the room and book it. Put a timer. Okay? CCTV and also entry systems, all of that. I honestly don't personally feel that the technology has evolved yet to a point where all those things integrate. Not yet. I don't think. It's not really commercially viable yet. It will happen though. It will happen. And again, for grounds maintenance, they said, yes, absolutely. For maintenance, ground maintenance, we want to use all the information to get the data for landscaping maintenance. Final few slides. So we said, well, okay, the designers are currently using all these packages, design software. I mean, these are only the authoring tools and review tools. There are many, many others that were used, but these were the main ones. And we said, well, okay, what system are you going to use at the end? Those are all the CAFM systems, or integrated workplace management systems. Which ones are you going to use? What are your requirements? Well, we captured those in the beginning, and we said, well, okay, this is what we want to do. Well, which ones can actually do that? Which ones can actually do that during operation? And again, how much does it cost? Is it a 1-year license or 20-year license? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to get trained? All those questions that we asked earlier was part of the discovery of actually setting up the strategy. And then again, we said, well, okay, fine. We're creating all the COVID data. We're creating all the models. So here's the authoring tool. There's the data that's handed over. And if that's your system of choice, IBM Maximo in this case, there are many of them, lots and lots. If that's what you're going to do, then you need to understand that you're only able to update information one way. So in Maximo, currently, you can't update the model. You can only do it this way. So you can't use IBM Maximo to update the model. So someone is having to change the pump model in Maximo, change it, the data, and someone is also having to go back into Revit and change the pump in Revit. Okay? So there are systems that work both ways, but again, maybe they cost more, maybe they haven't got the other functionality. I think the FM industry they're going through a disruptive period, and I'm sure that these providers will very, very soon catch on to the fact that we need to be BIM compatible. We need to be able to import this information and push it all back from an iPad, preferably. Just finally then, factors for successful BIM and FM implementation. I've pretty much covered all of it already. Early FM engagement, can't stress it enough. These workshops we had with the guys, these are the guys who are actually going to work in the building at the end. We said, how do you want to operate? We're in design. You're not going to work in that building for another 2 years, but it doesn't matter. We need to know now. Really important. Clearly defined asset information. I spoke about the AIR. You need to understand what information is provided at the end and how it's going to get used. Very critical. Don't produce information that's not useful at the end. It's just pointless. And then good management of the BIM process from the beginning to the end. To the end. And I think PMs are well placed to do that. Because you're with the client from stage 0, through procurement, through design, through construction. You help the actual handover and commissioning process and the post-occupancy evaluation. Those few years afterwards, really, really important. But remember, ultimately, it's all about structured digital information. Forget about BIM. It's all about structured digital information. And that's it. I appreciate the fact that we've overstayed.
Thank you. I think, those of you who lived through just over the hour, I think it was well worthwhile. Any of my students, particularly those students who are studying FM with me right now, huge value, because lots and lots of interface with things we've started to talk about, things we'll be talking about for the future. There are a couple of guys up there who are my building surveyors in another box.
Yeah.
Handover, commissioning, all those different things Etienne mentioned. I hope you logged those, because next week you're about to discover that's your homework for the rest of this term. So good on you being here. The rest of them who didn't turn up, they may wish to be really friendly with you for the next couple of weeks. So lots and lots of real interface. My message, as always, is these are tools you need in whichever box to manage that process efficiently, effectively. So don't get hung up on which piece of software right now. You need to understand and manage that process. And it's something that I started with CPD lecture the second week of last term. We looked at that RIBA process, and it's always exactly the same message. Tonight we're talking about BIM, but we're talking about right at the outset, at that stage 0, we have to consider stage 7. We have to, whether we're talking this building, whether we're talking Battersea or your Cambridge projects, we have to look after our assets. It's preparing, it's planning, and taking all those different things on board. And at this stage I say, and you're the generation that's going to do it, it's not me, so look after those assets. Use them wisely. Okay, I know a number of you want to talk to Etienne. If he's got the time, I'm sure you're going to continue talking. I'm going to turn the camera off now.
That's right.
Just in case.
Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.